Is being a collector embarrassing? This is Blackbird Rook, a weekly essay on contemporary art and the culture around it. I was listening to Anna Wintour being interviewed on the Rest is Politics offshoot the other day. Rory Stewart asking her, in that politely insistent way of his, whether there was a category of idea she always knew would fail, an idea whose shape alone guaranteed it would be wrong. She suggested that you could always be surprised as to what might take root, and noted that the most read piece across all Condé Nast platforms that week had been titled, "Is Having a Boyfriend Embarrassing?" On the face of it, it's a daft question, but also, obviously, the right one. The perfect contemporary headline. The kind of clickbait that tells you a lot about the culture. What makes it so compelling is the vision of the self turning inward, interrogating itself before anyone else can. The question is the punchline, the setup, and the diagnosis. Is the thing I'm doing embarrassing in the eyes of people exactly like me? It's the cultural logic of the moment, a generation raised on permanent self-audit, conditioned to analyze every decision for its social implications, trained to anticipate humiliation before it arrives. An adolescence spent under the soft tyranny of the front-facing camera. And yet it's also funny. A beautifully distilled fragment of modern hysteria, a wink at our shared neurosis. A headline that both mocks and mirrors contemporary self-awareness. You can hear the meeting in which it was proposed. Silence, then recognition, then approval. It's absurd. It's true. It will work. To me, it invited a parallel question within the art world, a space where self-consciousness and performance have their own long history. Is being a collector embarrassing? As this question crossed my mind, it landed with a small, uncomfortable thud of recognition. Not because collecting is embarrassing, it shouldn't be, but because embarrassment sits around the activity in Britain like a low mist, a cultural hangover, a national reflex we've never quite shaken. I've written before about the British allergy to intellectual enthusiasm, the way simply reading a broadsheet once earned you the nickname Professor, the suspicion of anything that takes itself seriously, the sense that art belongs to another tribe, somewhere continental, faintly effete, slightly too interested in ideas. And then, over the top of that, the Thatcher-era caricature of wealth, the Harry Enfield loads of money figure, all brashness and bravado, a parody of class aspiration so potent it still shapes the national psyche. In that climate, collecting art becomes something awkwardly in between, too thoughtful to align with the swagger of money, too indulgent to sit comfortably with British modesty, too serious for polite company unless wrapped in irony, too expressive a taste for a country that prefers its passions a little half-hidden. Even now, when collecting is infinitely more accessible and democratized, many collectors negotiate an embarrassment, a faint fear of being seen as pretentious, extravagant, or overly earnest. They might joke about their interest before anyone else can. They diminish their discernment. They frame their acquisitions as accidents. They worry that caring too much about painting might look suspiciously intellectual or serious. And yet the embarrassment is not confined to Britain's old anti-intellectual reflexes. Something newer is at work. The Wintour headline gives it away. We now live in an age in which everyone is trained to see themselves from the outside. Young people do this instinctively. Older ones have caught up. Social media has normalized a mode of self-consciousness in which every action is a performance, every preference a potential liability, every decision a statement that must be defensible to an invisible court of peers. Under that gaze, even the private act of collecting risks feeling exposed. A decision made in a living room can feel as if it's being made in public. The imagined audience hovers, and the art becomes evidence. The question, is having a boyfriend embarrassing, works not because the subject is universal, but because the neurosis is. It captures the contemporary instinct to preempt judgment by delivering it yourself. It's satire wearing the mask of sincerity. It's sincerity disguised as irony. It is the Ouroboros of modern self-understanding. And that is a thread that touches collecting. Not morality, not class, but embarrassment itself. As a posture, as a pre-emptive defense, as a habit of mind inherited from a country that distrusts cultural seriousness and amplified by platforms that demand continuous self-scrutiny. Which means the more revealing question isn't whether collecting is embarrassing, but why embarrassment has become our baseline emotion around taste at all. Why must enthusiasm be hedged and curiosity qualified? Why do people who care about art need to find a way to perform the caring so that it doesn't look earnest enough to provoke ridicule? These questions linger without resolving themselves. They don't lead to a rallying cry. They simply suggest that the embarrassment itself is the artifact worth studying. The collector, in that sense, becomes a useful lens, a figure caught between old British inhibitions and new digital anxieties. Someone who wants something for reasons that may be private, illogical, or emotional, but who lives in a culture that treats such desires as faintly suspect. The Wintour headline and my question belong to the same family. Both are shaped by a cultural moment that mistrusts sincerity, fears misinterpretation, and continually turns inward in order to anticipate the verdict of others. Both rely on irony as a protective skin. Both ask in different ways, how does this look? What does this mean? What will people think of me? And both point toward a world in which embarrassment, once a brief situational feeling, has perhaps become the ambient weather. Is being a collector embarrassing? The answer is less interesting than the atmosphere that made the question possible.